All right. Hello, party people in the podcast world, and welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of Law Candor. You guys thought we would not be back. For those of you who are new to the show, Law Candor is the podcast wholly devoted to pursuing the legal technology revolution. I'm Bill Mariano here with my co-host, Rob Hellewell. And again, welcome to the show. It's nice to have you. For those of you familiar with the format, the first thing we're going to do before we get to our guest speaker is we're going to get into a segment that we call
Sightings of Radical Brilliance.
And as the name implies, this is the part of the show where we bring you the latest news of noteworthy innovation and acts of sheer genius, or in this case, sheer stupidity. Rob, do you want to introduce the topic today?
Yeah, Bill, this one's an interesting one. So if you remember the BTK killer, which was in the news for years and years and years as they've released more information about this, one of the main things that got him caught actually really heavily relied on computer forensics. And specifically what happened is, and I'm kind of an expert on this because I've been watching Mindhunter on Netflix. So this is like right in my wheelhouse right now. But but basically, he had sent a computer disk to a news station. And, when they put that disk under closer examination, they actually found a deleted file on there. Basically, with a Google search, they figured out who he was. There was a connection to a church. The police were then able to, sort of do a drive-by by his house. And, the clues started to stack up from there.
It's amazing. I remember, a few years ago, there was a show on Fox at like 4:30 in the morning, like the mindless television that'll come on at that time, called Stupid Criminals. And this has got to be right up there with it. I mean, listen, we're not all in the eDiscovery industry, but the fact that this guy had sent a disc that he had from his local church where he was doing work and didn't realize that there was a deleted file on that was able to trace him back to him is just amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's, again, maybe it's because we're in the industry, we've seen this happen, many times before, but mostly we saw it happening 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's bad that, so I first heard about the BTK killer in one of those Dateline type episodes. Do you think it's bad that my wife is constantly taking notes during those episodes of Dateline that she's addicted to?
It's not bad unless she's sending them to anyone, but yeah, definitely a little bit of a cause for concern.
I just feel like she knows how to get away with things, which that gives me great fear. So anyway, it really fun story, a tragic story, but it really fun in that these criminals are idiots, and some of them you just realize some of them I think subconsciously want to get caught, and this moron thankfully was one of those idiots, and they were able to catch him to get him off the streets. But what a moron, and this is where technology actually does a lot more than what we do, which is to find privileged documents. In this case, they actually got a guy off the streets, which is pretty cool. So anyway, moving on from Sightings of Radical Brilliance, today we were going to get to our first guest and the topic of the day.
Today we're going to be talking about bridging the gap, innovative ways to enable eDiscovery and collaboration between legal and IT. And we have a special guest today, Craig Shaver, Director of eDiscovery at Hilton Worldwide. And maybe, Craig, could you just maybe introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background?
Yeah, Rob, I sure will. And thanks again for inviting me to participate in the podcast. I'm a big fan, and I've been listening for a long time, and it's just an honor. I come from Lansing, Michigan. I've been in the hotel industry for around 30 years. I started my career in IT in network operations at Holiday Inns when they used to be based in Memphis, where I lived. Holiday, shortly after I joined the team, decided they were going to move to Atlanta, and there was kind of a split in the company. Part of the company moved to Atlanta, the other company stayed in Memphis and became Promise Hotels, and I became part of the Promise Hotels IT team. And then in 2000, Promise merged with Hilton, and I moved over to the Hilton IT team. I used to run the network operations and engineering group in IT. In 2009, shortly after Blackstone took Hilton private, I made the transition to start up the eDiscovery group in legal, and I've been here ever since.
Craig, I want to level set here for the listeners, because I always say to clients that legal and IT don't necessarily sit at the same lunch table, to use a high school analogy, but that's one thing, but what happens when legal and IT are out of sync?
Bill, that's a good question, and I think there's a lot of answers to it. I think the main point is that legal and IT have different priorities. Legal obviously is there to ensure that we conduct thorough and accurate investigations, applying the same search criteria techniques against all the data we have. We strive to ensure that data under legal hold is retained and protected. IT is kind of out there looking at innovative ways to manage the ever-increasing amounts of data being stored to save money, improve security, and reduce staff all at the same time, which they can never do, of course. So while IT is aware of legal's needs, IT is getting direction from other departments within an organization as well. And so they've got challenges in their alignment with those groups. These days, it's really easy for an internal organization on a tight timeline to negotiate some sort of agreement with a cloud-based solutions provider to support an initiative. So these types of agreements might not be set up to properly protect or facilitate the export of data or records or any other proprietary data, and they may not comply with the company's legal hold or data retention policies. So I guess, legal has problems with staying in sync with IT. IT has problems with staying in sync with other parts of the business as well.
And Craig, when that happens and you have this potential to be out of sync, what are some of the real consequences of that?
We want to be able to conduct investigations that are comprehensive, can be defended against possible audits or challenges. I think if the groups are out of sync, it's possible that we could miss things. I know I won't say that it's ever happened to me, but it's possible that things can happen like that. So data that's supposed to be on legal hold, if you're not in good sync with IT, might be left unprotected. Potentially responsive data could go uncollected. The risks are the usual group of horribles. Motions to compel, spoliation charges, sanctions, unwanted media scrutiny, always something that we're concerned about, and other career-ending events.
Yeah, all things we all want to avoid. Good point.
So Craig, in your opinion, and look, every organization is set up somewhat differently. So in terms of role, who's the best person to, well, I get two questions really. Who's the best person to lead the effort in aligning legal and IT? In terms of a role, a type of person, and are there any other departments within the organization that need to be at the table as well to make sure they're in sync?
Bill, that's a great question. Since legal is ultimately responsible to ensure its objectives are met, there should at least be equal participation between the two groups, legal and IT. I think whoever is designated the legal liaison, and I'm using that term loosely, they're going to need to sit on a lot of steering committees. They're going to need to be part of internal decisions involving technology, data, record storage. It's going to be a tough job. It's going to involve a lot of travel, late night work, particularly for global organizations. If your company has offshore locations and offices, you're going to want to maintain contacts with those folks as well. GDPR comes to mind as one of those offshore areas where outside contacts can be of great assistance. So I guess in the end, there may be more than one or two people who get tagged as liaisons for ensuring alignment.
I was going to say, that's a tough job description. Must be proficient in everything, stay up all night, willing to travel at a moment's notice. That's a tough one.
And believe it or not, there's still people that want to do that, right?
Yeah. And I'm curious, Craig, as you've kind of seen this process unfold, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen in getting that good alignment between IT and legal?
Rob, I think the biggest issues I've seen primarily involved major technology migrations like email, document retention, and cloud-based services. Anytime some major change occurs to these infrastructure systems, problems can occur unless they've been planned up front really well and had lots of post-migration testing. And these challenges could impact the way you access and search the data. And I think we discussed that earlier. The impact could be mitigated through good planning and thorough post-implementation testing.
And so what are some of the new ways that these two groups can ensure they are aligned? And then what are the benefits to an organization of getting themselves into this alignment?
Great question, Bill. I think legal needs to have its own house in order first. It's essential that a company have an effective legal holds process. And I'm going to talk about legal holds a lot through this discussion, but to me, that's one of the key points to eDiscovery. That includes effective and timely communications to custodians about what records need to be retained, for how long. Legal also needs to have a clear and consistent policy regarding data retention and retention schedules. And legal needs to have a defensible deletion policy in place. So without our own policies in place, it's hard to coordinate with and challenge IT on what they're doing. But to go back to the meat of your question, I think legal needs to be part of the approval process for new applications and infrastructure components. Many companies will already have this in place, but it's critical that legal actively participate in this process. Understanding the impact of deployment of new cloud-based systems on their existing eDiscovery process is well worth the time spent, meeting with program managers and others prior to deployment. The engagement should include a review of new product statements of work, service level agreements, and those kinds of things. And then I think you really have to treat IT more like a partner. You want to try to attend their annual planning and budget sessions if that's possible. The more legal can interface with IT and kind of talk IT, the better will be our understanding of their plans and challenges. Weekly meetings with key stakeholders is important to building trust and keeping open these lines of communication. We also want IT to benefit from the relationship. So we can help IT enforce their deployment and security policies with other departments in the organization. Legal can also help IT ensure that national privacy laws, GDPR, any other regulations are considered when IT looks at new products and implementation processes.
So I think what you're saying is that IT and legal should occasionally sit at the same lunch table. Everyone's like, no one's got cooties here. It would benefit everybody to sort of sit at the same lunch table every once in a while.
Yeah, I think so. I think some of the benefits for that would involve, seamless integration of processes or near seamless, better understanding of project timelines and service levels, fewer points of friction between very busy teams. It will help with future projects as well, as legal and the IT teams get to know each other better, understanding their time and technology constraints, and getting more familiar with IT's change management process. That's really a key. That's something that, even though when I was in IT, I worked around change management, when I got to legal, I really understood what it was like to have to wait 3 months, 4 months, 5 months to get things done. But the more we work with IT, the better we're going to understand those processes.
And Craig, as someone who's been involved in this process for a long time, what do you think are some of the big mistakes that you've seen people make?
I think part of it is to over-deliver, assuming that, we've kind of got this Amazon mentality in a lot of things where, you think you can place an order or make a request and in 24 hours it's going to be at your desk, or, it's in some reasonable amount of time. But in the real world, it takes months, and you have to go through security processes. I remember when we first deployed our eDiscovery system back in 2009, we virtually had no oversight from the security and privacy team. And we tried to make an upgrade last year, and it literally took a year. We had to have it tested. We had to have the security confirmed. The vendor needed to have discussions with our internal folks. So I think that's to me one of the biggest issues that you're going to have is just understanding the ever-evolving security requirements, how they can play on your ability to deliver a service for legal.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Craig, we want to thank you for being here today. And I think maybe just to sort of wrap things up, that in trying to find that perfect relationship and integration between legal and IT, you want to make sure that you've picked the right people on both sides to make that happen, that you've got your goals aligned, and good planning and testing. I think these are all key, and I think you've given us a lot of great advice today. We want to thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Bill and Rob. I look forward to listening to the Law Candor podcast in the future, and honored again for you allowing me to participate.
Yeah, you can tell Rob that I'm your favorite host on here. He's fine with it. He's totally fine with it.
Rob already knows that, Bill, but now that you've made it public, we'll just admit it.
It'd be good for him to hear it at least once.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, Craig.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.